On October 15, 1939, World War II was entering a phase of recalibration after the intense events of the previous weeks. The shocking U-boat attack on HMS Royal Oak at Scapa Flow had shaken the British public, highlighting the vulnerability of even the most secure naval bases. Meanwhile, both Nazi Germany and the Allies were intensifying their military preparations as it became clear that the conflict was far from a short-lived affair. Diplomatic efforts to secure neutral support were also unfolding, while military strategists on both sides re-examined their priorities and alliances. Military events, naval warfare and strategic movements. Following the devastating success of the U-47's attack on Royal Oak on October 14th, the German Kriegsmarine celebrated its victory while the British Navy scrambled to reinforce its naval defenses. On October 15th, British forces immediately focused on plugging gaps in the Scapa Flow defenses, including repairing and reinforcing submarine nets and deploying additional patrol ships and anti-submarine technologies. This was a major effort to avoid further humiliating and costly losses. The naval war in the Atlantic was gaining momentum, with German U-boats increasingly targeting British merchant and naval ships. This day marked a period of heightened tension in the Atlantic, as British and Allied convoys became primary targets of German U-boats, which aimed to cut off Britain's vital supply lines. Admiral Karl Donit's strategy of unrestricted submarine warfare was fully in effect, and the tonnage war to cripple British logistics and morale was intensifying. On land, there were no major battles, but the stalemate on the Western Front continued as both German and French forces remained behind their respective defensive lines, the Siegfried Line for Germany and the Maginot Line for France. However, military patrols and small skirmishes along the border kept tensions high as both sides prepared for the inevitable large-scale engagements that would soon follow. Diplomatic and geopolitical developments. The role of neutrals and alliances. On the diplomatic front, efforts to engage neutral countries in the war effort were intensifying. Germany, eager to secure its northern flank, was closely monitoring the situation in Scandinavia. Norway and Sweden, in particular, were being courted by both the Allies and Germany. The German High Command recognized that control over Norway would provide strategic advantages for naval operations in the North Sea, and diplomatic feelers were being extended to test the waters. At the same time, the Soviet Union, under Stalin, was positioning itself to exert more influence in Eastern Europe. Having already occupied the eastern half of Poland under the terms of the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, the Soviets were now turning their attention to Finland and the Baltic states. Stalin's demands for territorial concessions from Finland were intensifying, and there were growing concerns about an imminent Soviet-Finnish conflict. In Britain, Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain's government was grappling with the growing realization that a long and difficult war lay ahead. The shock of the Scapa Flow attack led to increased calls for strengthening naval defenses and better coordination between British and French forces. Chamberlain, still committed to avoiding a full-scale land invasion of Western Europe, was focused on fortifying the British Isles and keeping communication lines open with neutral powers that might be sympathetic to the Allied cause. International reactions and media coverage. The British press continued to dissect the events of the Scapa Flow disaster, with newspapers like The Times and the Daily Telegraph offering extensive coverage of the aftermath. Headlines emphasized the vulnerability of Britain's naval defenses and urged the government to take immediate action to prevent further U-boat attacks. Editorials reflected public anxiety, with many questioning the preparedness of the Royal Navy and the government's ability to protect the British Isles from further attacks. In Germany, the success of U-47 was celebrated as a major propaganda victory. The Nazi regime seized on the sinking of Royal Oak as a symbol of German naval prowess, and Gunther Prien, the commander of U-47, became a national hero. The German press glorified the attack, and the story of Prien's daring mission was widely circulated to boost morale at home and justify the ongoing war effort. In France, there was increasing concern about the effectiveness of Allied coordination. French newspapers like Le Figaro called for closer military cooperation with Britain, particularly in defending against the U-boat threat. The sense of urgency in France was growing as German forces continued to fortify their positions along the Siegfried Line, and there were fears that a German invasion through Belgium and the Netherlands was becoming increasingly likely. Projections. The impact of October 15th on the future of the war. The events of October 15, 1939, underscored the growing importance of naval warfare in shaping the course of World War II. The success of U-boat operations in the Atlantic, particularly the attack on HMS Royal Oak, demonstrated the vulnerability of Britain's naval defenses and the effectiveness of Germany's submarine strategy. This day also marked the beginning of a broader effort by the British to enhance their anti-submarine warfare capabilities, which would become a central focus as the war progressed. Looking ahead, the U-boat threat would continue to dominate the naval theater of the war, forcing the Allies to develop new tactics and technologies to counter the German submarine menace. At the same time, the diplomatic maneuvers of both Germany and the Soviet Union would reshape the political landscape of Europe, as neutral countries were drawn into the conflict, and the stage was set for future confrontations in Scandinavia and Eastern Europe.